The basement door slammed shut with a sickening finality. "Have fun in the dark, freak." Marcus's laughter echoed from the other side as I heard the lock click into place. "Marcus, please. You know I'm claustrophobic." My voice cracked as I pounded on the door. At 13 I was 2 years younger than my cousin. But this wasn't about age anymore. This was about power. "Lucas." My Uncle Tom's voice drifted from upstairs. "Where are you, buddy?" I opened my mouth to scream for help, but Marcus's earlier threat rang in my ears. "If you tell anyone, I'll make sure Aunt Sarah loses her job at Dad's company." My mom was a single parent and that job meant everything to us. "He's at the park," Marcus called cheerfully up the stairs. "Said he needed some air." The basement was pitch black. I fumbled for my phone, only to remember Marcus had taken it earlier, claiming he needed to borrow it. This wasn't the first time he'd locked me down here, but it was the first time he'd done it when it was getting dark outside. My parents thought sending me to stay with Uncle Tom's family while Mom recovered from surgery was the perfect solution. They didn't know that my cousin Marcus had changed, from the fun playmate of our childhood into something darker. I slid down against the wall trying to control my breathing. The darkness pressed in from all sides. Somewhere in the blackness, water dripped steadily. Drip, drip, drip. Sound made me flinch. Hours passed. The thin strip of light under the door faded to nothing. My legs went numb from sitting on the cold concrete floor, but I was too scared to move. There were tools down here, sharp things that could hurt me if I stumbled into them. "Lucas." A new voice called down. It was Patricia this time. "Marcus says you're still at the park." "It's dinner time, young man." I stayed silent. The last time I called for help, Marcus made sure I regretted it. The bruises had taken weeks to fade and I'd had to lie to my teachers about falling off my bike. But Ms. Reynolds, my English teacher, hadn't believed me. She'd been watching, asking careful questions whenever I showed up with new accidents. "He's probably at that weird kid Kevin's house," Marcus suggested upstairs. "You know how he is. No respect for family dinner time." More hours crawled by. Without my phone I couldn't even check the time. No windows, no light, just darkness and that endless dripping. Finally, footsteps on the stairs. The lock clicked. "Hey freak. Show's over," Marcus announced, swinging the door open. "Mom and Dad are asleep." "Lucky for you, I'm feeling generous." I stumbled up the stairs, my legs barely working. In the kitchen light, Marcus looked at me with that familiar mix of disgust and amusement. "You look terrible," he smirked. "Maybe wash your face before anyone sees you crying like a baby." The microwave clock read 11:45 p.m. I'd been down there for almost 6 hours. The next morning at school I could barely keep my eyes open. Every shadow made me jump. When Ms. Reynolds asked me to stay after class, I thought she was going to scold me for nodding off. Instead she closed the classroom door, her expression concerned. "Lucas, I need you to be honest with me. What's really happening at your uncle's house?" "Nothing," I said automatically. "Everything's fine." He pulled out a notebook. "In the past 3 weeks, you've come to school with 2 unexplained bruises, a sprained wrist, and now you can barely stay awake. That's not nothing." "I'm just clumsy," I mumbled, but my hands were shaking. "Lucas," she said softly, "I've already called CPS. They're going to want to talk to you and I need you to tell them the truth. Can you do that?" My heart stopped. "No, he can't," I began, but she interrupted. "Your mom's job is secure. I've already spoken with the school board and your mother's union representative. Your uncle can't touch her job no matter what happens." That's when I broke. Everything poured out. The basement, the threats, the accidents that weren't accidents at all. Ms. Reynolds recorded everything, her face growing grimmer with each revelation. "You're not going back there today," she said firmly when I finished. "We're going to the principal's office and we're calling your mom right now." As we walked to the office I saw Marcus in the hallway. He started to smirk, then froze when he saw who I was with. For the first time I saw fear flicker in his eyes. I straightened my shoulders and kept walking. The principal's office buzzed with tension. I sat between Ms. Reynolds and Mrs. Garcia, the school counselor. Uncle Tom arrived, his face red with anger, while a calm-faced woman in a gray suit introduced herself as Mrs. Bennett from Child Protective Services. "This is ridiculous," Uncle Tom sputtered. "Marcus and Lucas are like brothers. They play rough sometimes, sure, but—" "Mr. Walker," Mrs. Bennett interrupted, We have documented evidence of systematic abuse. Your nephew spent 6 hours locked in your basement last night. Would you like to explain that? He's making it up. Uncle Tom's fist slammed the desk. Lucas has always been imaginative. Just ask his mother. I did. My mom's voice cut through the room like steel. She stood in the doorway, pale but steady, supported by our neighbor. Despite her surgery, she had come the moment the school called. Sarah, Uncle Tom said, his tone turning honey-sweet. You should be resting. This is all just a misunderstanding. Is this a misunderstanding too? Ms. Reynolds placed her phone on the principal's desk and pressed play. Security footage from the school filled the screen. Marcus cornering me in empty hallways, shoving me into lockers when teachers weren't looking. I installed a recording app on Lucas's phone 3 weeks ago, Ms. Reynolds continued. Last night, it captured everything, including Marcus taking his phone and Lucas's calls for help from the basement. The color drained from Uncle Tom's face. That's illegal. You can't record. Actually, Mrs. Bennet said, in cases of suspected child abuse, it's admissible evidence. Mom crossed the room and knelt beside me. Why didn't you tell me, baby? Marcus said Uncle Tom would fire you, I whispered. We need that job. No job is worth this, she said firmly, turning to her brother. Tom, how could you let this happen? I trusted you to protect my son while I recovered. Instead, you let your own son terrorize him. Before Uncle Tom could answer, the door opened again. Marcus and his mother, Patricia, stepped in looking shocked. What's going on? Patricia asked, but Marcus's eyes locked on the footage playing silently on the screen. Your son has been abusing his cousin, Mrs. Bennet stated bluntly. We have evidence of multiple incidents, including false imprisonment last night. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus. For once, my cousin didn't have a smooth lie ready. He stood frozen, watching his carefully constructed world crumble. It was just jokes, he muttered. Lucas is so sensitive about everything. Locking someone in a dark basement for 6 hours isn't a joke, Ms. Reynolds said sharply. Neither is threatening them to keep quiet. Mrs. Bennet cleared her throat. Given the severity of the situation, we're opening a full investigation. Lucas, is there somewhere else you can stay for now? He's coming home, Mom said firmly. I have help with my recovery now and he never should have left. You can't prove anything. Marcus suddenly burst out. It's his word against mine. Actually, Ms. Reynolds pulled out her notebook. I've documented every incident, every unexplained injury, and every behavioral change for the past 3 months. 27 separate incidents, Marcus. And now we have recordings too. The next hour blurred together. Statements, paperwork, and questions. Mrs. Bennet took detailed notes while Mrs. Garcia gently asked me about other incidents. Mom sat beside me, her hand gripping mine tightly. As I finally let out all the secrets I'd been keeping, Uncle Tom kept trying to minimize everything, calling it boys being boys. But even Patricia had turned away from him, horror growing on her face as the evidence mounted. There will be consequences, Mrs. Bennet announced at the end. Marcus will need a psychological evaluation and counseling. And Mr. Walker, your negligence is a serious concern. As we left the office, Marcus caught my eye one last time. The power had shifted. He wasn't in control anymore. For the first time I saw him for what he was. Not a monster but a troubled kid who'd been allowed to become cruel. Let's go home, Mom said softly. Tears of relief stung my eyes. Home, where I didn't have to be afraid of the dark. Ms. Reynolds touched my shoulder as we left. You're one of the bravest students I've ever had, Lucas. Remember that. Walking to our neighbor's car, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The basement door was locked forever now, but this time I was on the right side of it. 3 months later, I sat in Dr. Carter's office for my weekly therapy session. The walls were painted a calming blue, nothing like the darkness of that basement. How are the nightmares? She asked, her kind eyes studying my face. Better, I answered truthfully. I only had one this week and I used the breathing techniques you taught me. The investigation had revealed more than just Marcus's abuse. Uncle Tom had a history of covering up his son's behavior, even at their previous school. They'd moved here after Marcus seriously hurt another student, but those records had been quietly buried. And how are things at school? Dr. Carter asked. I thought about it. Marcus had been transferred to a specialized program for troubled teens. His absence in the hallways lifted a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Different, I said. Better. Kevin and I actually started a support group for kids who've dealt with bullying or abuse. Ms. Reynolds is our faculty advisor. Dr. Carter smiled. That's wonderful, Lucas. Using your experience to help others is a powerful form of healing. The group had been Kevin's idea. He'd been Marcus's target before me. After everything came out, he was the first to reach out. Now we had 15 regular members and met twice a week during lunch. At home things had changed too. Mom had fully recovered from her surgery, and our relationship was stronger than ever. No more secrets. We even started a tradition of leaving small lights on throughout the house at night. Not because you're afraid, Mom said once, but because everyone deserves to know there's always light if they need it. Uncle Tom had tried to reach out several times, sending apologetic messages through other family members. Mom blocked his number after one last attempt to start fresh and put the past behind us. Have you heard anything from Marcus? Dr. Carter asked carefully. I nodded slowly. His counselor at the new school asked if I'd read a letter he wrote. Part of his therapy program. And how do you feel about that? Scared, I admitted. But maybe ready. Ms. Reynolds offered to sit with me while I read it. The letter had arrived yesterday and was sitting unopened on my desk at home. Part of me wanted to burn it, but another part needed to know if Marcus understood what he'd done. After my session, Mom was waiting outside. We had another appointment, this one at the youth center where I'd be speaking to a group about recognizing and reporting abuse. Mrs. Bennett from CPS had asked me to share my story. You don't have to do this, Mom reminded me as we drove. I want to, I said firmly. If Ms. Reynolds hadn't been paying attention, if she hadn't documented everything, I might still be living in fear. The youth center was full of kids my age, some looking as scared as I used to feel. I took a deep breath and walked to the front, spotting Ms. Reynolds sitting in the back. My name is Lucas, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. 3 months ago I thought keeping quiet about abuse meant protecting my family. I was wrong. Silence only protects the abusers. As I told my story, I saw recognition in some faces, fear in others. Afterward, several kids came up to me privately. Each one had a story, a secret, a basement of their own. That evening I finally opened Marcus's letter. Mom sat nearby, ready if I needed her, while Ms. Reynolds joined us via video call. Dear Lucas, I'm sorry. Those words feel small compared to what I did, but they're true. My counselor is helping me understand why I hurt you, but understanding doesn't excuse it. I was angry about things that had nothing to do with you, and I took that anger out on you because I could, because Dad always covered for me. That made me think I was untouchable. I was wrong. I'm learning to be different. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. It was mine. Tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of fear this time. They were tears of release. You okay? Mom asked softly. I nodded. Yeah. I think I am. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The scared kid from 3 months ago was gone. In his place stood someone stronger. Someone who had found his voice in the darkness and used it to help others find their way out too. I turned off the main light but left the small nightlight glowing. Not because I needed it, but because it reminded me that even the darkest basements can't stay dark forever. Not when you have people willing to shine a light and help you find your way.